Welcome to Slotbox. Today we're going to tie a pattern called the little crappie fly. It got its name because it was originally tied as a panfish streamer for crappie specifically, and it did very well. It since though has spread to become very popular for trout. It's brought some of my largest trout to hand. It's caught pickerel, it's caught smallmouth, it's caught all the panfish, it's caught bass, largemouth bass. It's a true crossover pattern, and let's go over how we tie it. I start off with a size 12 nymph hook and a gold bead. We're going to start off by adding about 7 wraps of lead substitute wire. And we're going to use that to seat the bead primarily. And then we're going to start our thread right behind it. We're going to build ourselves a dam, secure that lead real good behind the bead. And then we'll trim off our butt end. Next material we're going to tie in is tan Marabou, and we're just going to use the tips. We're not going to use a lot. We're going to use a small section, just a small section of tip. And I'm going to measure this the length of the hook. I'm going to pinch at the point where it's the length of the hook, and I'm going to trim about 1/4 inch ahead of that. That's going to allow me to place that Marabou right behind that lead and wrap back to our tie-in point of the tail, which is point even with the barb of the hook. And then I'm going to bring my thread back up to the back of that lead. At that point, we're going to tie in fine gold wire. Right behind the lead. And we're going to wrap that back to the same point as the tie-in point of the tail. And we're going to bring our thread back up to the back of that lead. All this helps us to level out the body as well. Next material we're going to tie in is gold holographic tinsel. This is small. And we're going to tie that in as well. Looks like I missed it. Give a little pinch wrap. Pull the butt end back to the even with the lead instead of rushing myself. And we're going to secure that all the way back to the tie-in point as well. And we're going to bring our thread up onto about a midway point of the lead thorax. And let me level off that junction a little bit. There we go. Next we're going to wrap our gold mylar, our holographic tinsel, forward. And I used to tie this just with the tinsel without the wire. Tinsel's pretty durable, and it does hold up fairly well like that for panfish, for trout. However, this pattern is very attractive to pickerel, and if you don't use wire, it will chew up this mylar fairly fast. If it wasn't for pickerel, or you have no pickerel in the water, and you're just going to use it for panfish and trout, I just double layer, I double wrap, I wrap back and forward with the mylar, and that's pretty much all you need. And we're going to bring that mylar the full length of the body. We're going to bring it up on the lead. I'd rather go a little bit further, but not far enough. And you're going to tie off at a point about midway onto the lead, or lead wire, substitute wire. Next, you're going to take your wire, you're going to palmer your wire forward, evenly spaced, standard nymph wrap, just palmer it forward. Should be able to get about 5 wraps. And you're going to bring that up behind the bead and tie that off as well. Tie it off and trim your excess. The next material you're going to tie in, I take 2 ostrich hurl. This is white ostrich hurl that I've dyed red with RIT dye. I'm going to take 2 of them, tie them in behind the bead, and you're going to wrap back to about right to about the end of that lead, probably 1/3 of the body length. You're going to bring your thread forward. Next, you're going to take a ringneck pheasant shoulder feather, prepped like as such with the hackle trimmed a little bit. You're going to tie that in facing over the bead. Try not to drop it. You're going to capture that stem. Secure that, overwrap it, and then you're going to take your 2 ostrich hurls. Once that feather is secured, you grab it with your hackle pliers, or you can use your fingers if you want, and you're just going to twist it a little bit. You don't want to wrap, I don't like to wrap these on straight. I give it a little bit of a rope effect, and I think it stands ostrich hurl up a little bit better like that. It's a fairly durable feather, so I don't add thread or wire to it. And I wrap a substantial, you should be able to get 3 or 4 wraps of that material behind the bead. Take it right up behind the bead. And you're going to tie that off. And then you're going to take your hackle pliers. You're going to grab that ringneck pheasant feather, and you're going to palmer the entire feather that's remaining. Should be able to get 2 full wraps. And you're going to tie that off right behind the bead. Trim that tip off. Splay your feathers by hand, make sure they're not bunched up at all or clumped up. and I sweep them back with my hand. And I bind into them just slightly. I want to force them back just a little bit, back over that ostrich hurl collar. And a quick whip finish. And there it is. Little crappie fly. It's a favorite of mine for trout in the winter. It's excellent for panfish, as I said. It's a very effective pike fly or pickerel fly. And it's also great when fished for crappie, as its namesake is. A little crappie fly. Hope it adds to your box that has mine. Good luck. See you in the water.